Hi, my name is Lyric, and today we're reacting to the scariest series on YouTube, Gemini Home Entertainment by legendary YouTuber Wendigoon. Now, I'm a big fan of Wendigoon, and I thought for some of these reactions on the channel, let's go through some of the Wendigoon videos that I haven't seen, because I've seen a lot of the main Wendigoon videos, some of my favorite ones. Favorite videos on YouTube are by Wendigoon. He does amazing, way of just conveying the story of telling you exactly how things happen. Does a good breakdown, comprehensive, and I just like his energy, he just kind of casually explaining to you something that he finds really interesting, and most of these really interesting, creepy or true crime or real conspiracy whatever topics. And yeah, so we're gonna for reactions, I thought I would go to watch some videos that are from Wendigoon that I haven't seen. And this is the old from what I can tell, this is the oldest Wendigoon video that I haven't seen. Cause I did a little bit of a binge, but I stopped, and this is where I stopped here. So of the ones that I haven't seen, this is the oldest one, and it's about a YouTube series called Gemini Home Entertainment. I don't know anything about it, so Wendigoon's gonna explain it to me. I've seen him explain certain things like the Mandela catalog. So yeah, I'm very curious to see how this is gonna go. So yeah, so we're trying to get this channel to 2,000 subs, so if you would subscribe, that'd be pretty cool. Like this video if you want to see me do more Wendigoon reactions, and comment, your opinions and everything. So let's just get into it here.
So if you're like me, then horror may seem a little stale as of lately. By and large, it seems that studios are just trying to get numbers up and are repeating tried old tropes. But if you're also like me, then I think I may have a solution. Internet horror allows for a lot more creativity.
This is the classic
and
Wendigoon
a lot
setup
more
here.
independence when it comes to how a work is portrayed. But that's a...
Yeah, honestly, internet horror has been like way better than any kind of professional studio horror for like the last few years. Like the internet horror has been like the main most popular type of horror content for quite a bit now, honestly, to be fair, since like the creepypasta era, really honestly, I think internet horror has been more popular just in popular culture and everything, than like movies and stuff.
Catch-22 because it can be a mixed bag. Some can be fantastic and others not worth your time. So let me point you in the direction of one of the former, Gemini Home Entertainment. Gemini Home Entertainment is a YouTube channel that currently consists of 15 episodes.
Dang, you make a video on this and they only had what was that, 28,000 subs?
So let me point you in the use for horror elements,
Okay, damn it.
horror
Hold up.
system inside of at creating Gemini Home Entertainment.
Yeah, I made a whole video of this. They only had 28,000 subs at the time, so it's pretty cool on Wendigoon to give this some light when it really didn't seem like he was that popular.
Is a YouTube channel that currently consists of 15 episodes. The creator of the series, Remy Abode, has done a fantastic job at creating a true analog horror. For those that don't know, analog horror is
analog horror is super popular,
such as Local 58, that managed to inject a horror system inside of the confines of an analog setting. In other words, if you think of old TV broadcast stations and how those can be used for horror elements, along those lines. Not only from a horror perspective, but Remy is incredibly talented at telling a subversive story behind the scenes through these incredible 3D models that he creates himself. Today I'm going to be going through the main plot of Gemini Home Entertainment and analyzing what the story might be. However, I highly encourage you, if this seems interesting at all, that you check out the original channel, which I've linked in the...
Of course, so go check out Gemini Home Entertainment, but also check out the original Wendigoon video. Have it on the background while you're watching this, or watch it beforehand. Give Wendigoon that view, obviously, because he deserves it.
As it is criminally underrated.
Subscribe to Wendigoon, of course.
Also check out Remy's Patreon, which I've also linked, because Gemini Home Entertainment itself is not monetized, and this guy deserves the support. Also, if this is interesting to you, I did a video on another analog horror series, Local 58, early on in my channel, which will also be linked below. I also want to give a massive thank you. So I love researching and recording videos like this, but I hate editing them. So a massive thank you to Caitlin, who is editing this currently.
Shout out.
For being a huge hand and letting me do stuff like this without hating half of the process. So her Twitter is going to be linked below. If you all enjoy the way that this video looks, I encourage you to follow her and let her know, because it was really appreciated and allows more content like this to come out. So thank you, Caitlin. And last but not least, I have to mention that Inside of Mind, another YouTube channel which I enjoy, made a video on Gemini Home Entertainment, and the points that they talked about are different from the points that I'm going to be talking about today. So if this seems interesting to you, I encourage you to check that video out. It will also be in the description. Oh yeah, and how could I forget? This guy, This little dude right here.
I need one of
2
those.
weeks left to get
100%.
it. Link in description is always.
That's way too late. Yeah, I was
Thank you
predicting
all
like
so
3
much
years
for
ago.
watching, and let's get into it. Hey son, sorry to bother you there. I was just thinking that since you're growing up and since you're becoming a man now, it was time that we
getting a
had
sponsor?
conversation. You're growing up, you're maturing, and it's time that we talked about something that's going to be
Okay,
very
Dad.
important to you in the next few years. And that's a good wallet. And what better wallet could I suggest?
Oh, I thought it was gonna be
than the
Manscaped.
Ridge wallet. See, everyone's got to adapt with the
We're
times.
using your video, so we're gonna let your
Gone are
sponsor
the
play
days
through
of
Isaiah.
having a wallet full of 500 different cards that you never use and never sets in your pockets comfortably, which is why Ridge is the do-it-all wallet in the smallest possible device you can get. To give you an idea, I put in this wallet every single card that I use on a daily basis, and as you can see, it is still way thinner than my old wallet with nothing in it. The Ridge wallet allows you to fit 12 cards inside of its very small frame comfortably. Not only that, but everyone needs to have some cash on them as well, and Ridge wallet has got you covered with this handy little money clip. So rather than having a massive bulky wallet that gets in your way all the time, you can carry it all in something that's smaller than your phone. Not only that, but the wallet has such durable construction that Ridge has a lifetime warranty on all their products. The construction also makes it RFID proof. In other words, people can't use electronic devices to steal your card's information. And to top it all off, it comes in over 30 different models and colors, meaning it's secure, it's durable, it's slim, and it's cool. So in order to get you all set up, I have teamed up with Ridge to offer you guys 10% off with discount code Wendigoon. And to make the deal even sweeter, you can use the wallet for up to 45 days and then send it back for a full refund. Because Ridge has such confidence in their products, and they should. Because I know after you get your hands
Is
on
it
the
even
thing,
worth
you're not gonna
playing
regret
the
it.
sponsor here?
So
Because it's
once
like 3
again,
years
discount
old.
code
Like the
Wendigoon,
code definitely
link
doesn't
is
work
in the
anymore.
description.
Yeah, whatever,
Thank
it's
you so much,
fine.
Ridge, for sponsoring this video, and thank you all for watching. The first episode is known as World's Weirdest Animals. It starts off as a standard nature documentary in rural Minnesota and focuses on different specific counties showing prairie chickens and burrowing owls, and everything seems fine until it flips and says we are now looking at something that is everywhere across North America, and it's specifically a creature known as wood crawlers. Now, as far as specifics of
Ugh.
everything that I'm going to talk about, at the end, I'm going to go back and analyze and try to put the pieces together, but for now, I'm just laying out the puzzle. It says that the wood crawlers are expert hunters, and they nest in the home of large
It's the ones in the missing 411 cases that causes all of them.
families. This is because, as the video says, it allows them to adapt easier, along with the comforting message that you will hear screaming,
Inside?
they stole their voices. It also says to burn the bodies lest they stand up again. So we've established that whatever this wood crawler is, it infests the homes of families as a means to adapt. We then receive footage of
So, like,
something called
skinwalkers
nature's
or something?
mockery. For now, to make it easier in the
Okay,
future,
like, steals their voices,
nature's
it said?
mockery and wood crawlers are synonymous. We then flip over to outside of the house, where it seems from found footage we are watching someone approach a house that has just been infested with wood crawlers. After watching these things that look like people stand still and sort of float across the ground,
Man, I hate Uncanny Valley things. Uncanny Valley things are some of the most best forms of horror on me, bro. They're so easy to get me, dude. Uncanny Valley things creep me out so much. And yeah, the nature of the Uncanny Valley in general is a scary idea in general, because like, why are all humans naturally afraid of things that are almost human but not quite? It's almost like we needed something like that for evolutionary purpose. But yeah, Uncanny Valley things just get me here. So these things, like, they like kind of almost look human. Very, very
they're
scary.
greeted with the title showing that they are, quote, fake people. We then see one of them off to the side moving their jaw in a very odd manner, as if they're trying to figure out how the movement works. This is before our cameraman is seen and chased away, ending the first film. As I mentioned, a lot of this may seem confusing at first, but hopefully as I go through explaining these, some of it starts to make more sense. Our second video is called Storm Safety Tips, and it's brought to us by someone known as Harbinge Technologies. This is our first mention of a specific company or entity making one of these videos. That will become more important as they go along, but just keep in mind that whenever I mention who makes one of these videos, just to hold on to it. Storm Safety Tips, similar to World's Weirdest Animals, seems to begin as a simple infomercial. This one is to instruct families on how to prepare for a storm.
The way it start off giving you a sense of security, kind of like that it's a normal thing, and then it kind of builds a picture that this is like something that's happening in like normal life, So it doesn't like, it disassociates you from reality. It like keeps you in reality and says this is something creepy happening in reality, so it kind of freaks you out more.
While it seems normal at first, it then tells you to prepare a structure that is a 10 by 18 foot room with a 4 to 5 foot hemisphere in the middle of the room. Not only that, but to then place a radio by the sphere itself. The messages then become even more odd, as it says to only turn on the radio in the case of an emergency. It then says, in the event of the storm, quietly go to the bunker. Your home does not belong to you now. Immediately we see a difference here, that this is not related to any ordinary storm. But as was mentioned in World's Weirdest Animals and will be mentioned later, flip the word storm with swarm and this starts to make more sense. It then says that whatever you hear through the radio is a hallucination, and that your tears are filled with salt, which is concerning. It says after the storm is past, listen for movement inside. We then get the very curious message of look to the field. Do you
Something I like about Wendigoon is when he's explaining all these creepy ass things, he doesn't do that typical YouTuber voice where he's like, and then they said that your tears are filled with salt. Like, he doesn't do that weird voice. Like, he just talks normally. It gives you, like, kind of a sense of security, you know, to watch these things without getting too freaked out, you know? You know that you got your good pal, uncle, you know, your good dad Isaiah to help you out, your daddy goon. Probably shouldn't say that, but
the
yeah.
lights return to your bunker. We're then greeted by footage of lights in the middle of the field before the message then switch and tells us to listen under your feet. This is implying that whatever swarm has infected the house is still there. We then finally get the image of a speaker, or something that appears to be a speaker, on top of a tower before the video ends. So Harbinge Technologies, whatever this entity is trying to inform us what to do if a storm or swarm attacks. We then start to figure out more of what's going on in our third video, The Deep Blue. This one's done by Geneva Production Company and seems to be a documentary about the ocean. As usual, everything seems normal at first, even though several of the facts mentioned are not correct, until we get to the Marianas Trench. We then see a fictional tunnel off to the side of the Marianas Trench known as the Demesia Tunnel, whose depth is unknown. We're then greeted by the image of this tentacle eye thing at the bottom of the ocean before transmission is cut off. This Demesia Tunnel implies that whatever's affecting us comes from somewhere very deep within the earth, and perhaps the culprit responsible is this squid-looking thing with a giant glowing eye. Not only that, but the light we see on top of the squid is incredibly familiar to the light seen in the field at the end of storm safety tips. So whatever this thing is at the bottom of the ocean, it seems that several of them have come out of the ocean and are now the danger that we have to be afraid of. In our fourth video, known as Artificial Computer Learning, we see a program from Regnad Computing. Regnad is demonstrating the capabilities of their AI program. This is done by showing generational learning, or in other words, every iteration of a computer's.
A lot of different types of horror here. So we had the Uncanny Valley stuff, then we had the ocean, now we're getting like AI, all types of different scary ass stuff here.
Processing gets better as it learns as time
that kind of
goes
combines.
on. This is demonstrated by telling the computer to write a short children's storybook, to which every iteration will become more clear. It is during this time that we're introduced to two very important names that will come up later, which is Jack and Mary. The first iteration seems simple enough, where it talks about Jack and Mary running and looking for a secret place. And then in Gen 2, it starts to get weird, where the last line of the story is, I hear you. We then get some more important details in Generation 3, where it says that Mary went down the river that Jack went over, and that the river does not flow with water. And then with Gen 4, we get a very foreboding message about Jack that says, Jack heard again, voice from space, I have become something else. And then finally, with our final iteration, it says, listen to the silver box, stars moving, the hungry eye, here I am. And we then receive an image of the tentacle eye thing shown in the deep blue. So for one, we have a name for this tentacle eye thing, which it's referred to as the hungry eye. Also, the details we get in the children's storybook are interesting. We're going to see later here that this is not a children's storybook at all, and instead an actual entity telling us these things. But what we get from the story mentioned is that Jack managed to get away and Mary did not. We then see that Jack heard a voice from space in some regard and became something else. In our final message, it says listen to the silver box. The only reference to something similar to a silver box that we've gotten so far is that of the radio mentioned in Storm Safety Tips. So this is conflicting information because in Storm Safety Tips it said do not listen to the radio, and now we're hearing do listen to the radio. But at the end of that same stanza,
one of them is probably the creature telling us, and one's maybe like the people trying to warn us away from it.
Hungry Eye says, "Here I am," implying that it is the Hungry Eye speaking. So best to probably listen to Storm Safety Tips rather than the eye tentacle thing.
Right.
The story itself becomes more
Probably shouldn't listen to Eye Tentacle Man.
Fourth iteration of our solar system.
Hold up, stop for a second, go back. Hold up. Someone need to mention.
Storm Safety Tips rather than the eye tentacle thing.
So let's look at the recommended videos here. So we have Gemini Home Entertainment, Gemini Home Entertainment, Gemini Home Entertainment. Where are all the Bob Ross paintings? Gemini Home Entertainment, Gemini Home Entertainment.
The story itself becomes more comprehensible with the fourth iteration of our solar system. Again, as the others, it opens up like a normal info show before.
Oh, now we have a space horror. Great.
Earth is one of the only.
So yeah, we had the uncanny, we had AI, we had the ocean, and now we're going into, you know, more, you know, space horror, you know, larger existential horror, so that's great.
Planets in the solar system to contain life. And then when it gets to Saturn, it says that the rings of Saturn are the gateway. I think it's really weird whenever we get to the planet Neptune, and it says that Neptune is the lens and has been mutated. We then see the iris appear. It then says that the iris is with us now, laughing at us.
The iris?
Behold, as the iris itself begins to move on camera. We then see a shot of a sort of laser or light from Neptune,
It's the Death Star,
and going through the solar system towards Earth. Now, while I can't be sure if this thing, the iris, is Neptune after it's been mutated, or if it's a new entity itself, I believe it's a new entity itself, as it says the iris is now with us, as if it came from somewhere else. What it seems happened is whenever this iris appeared, it attacked Neptune first. As it said, Neptune's been mutated.
It's the loudest,
and
it's
then
the loudest,
whatever happened to Neptune,
it's the farthest out, so it makes sense.
is now happening on Earth. In the 6th episode, Camp Information video, we find out about something known as Moonlight Acres Family Camp. During the activities section where it talks about everything to do at this camp, it mentions something known as the Harvest. In the description, it says that the Harvest is the lights in the sky event that the camp is known for.
The
These
harvest
lights,
will
once again,
commence.
are very similar to that of the Hungry Eye, which was seen in Storm Safety Tips. When talking about the cabins and accommodations at Moonlight Acres, it says that they are burrow-free, which is the burrow that was mentioned in World's Weirdest Animals. In other words, whatever these woodcrawler things are advertised as not being in the camp. When talking about safety equipment, we see the same tower that was shown in Storm Safety once again. The only true sign of warning we see is to not answer the knock at the door. When talking about the mythos and legends of the camp, it says that in 1935, well-dressed men appeared to the camp and every night would visit the counselor's cabin. It says that eventually a deal was made and the men no longer came around. It then talks about legends of skinwalkers that appeared around.
Oh, here we go. Now we got
We then
straight
see
up
another visual
skinwalkers
of the Hungry
being
Eye,
mentioned.
before we then move into a category called vessels. It shows different people who worked at the camp and how each of them were a vansel because they, quote, answered the door. Before finally cutting
Unlike
to
these
another
blurry
image
pictures of
Hungry
them.
Eye and saying
That's
that it
once
is
again
what
back to
has
uncanny.
enter. The episode then ends when the door that has been knocked at is opened. So what all did we see in that one? Well, for one, we see the mention of skinwalkers, which in traditional legend is a creature that can transform itself to look like a human. These skinwalkers are mentioned immediately after it says strange men used to visit the counselor's cabin. So because of this, we can infer that it was skinwalkers that were approaching the camp counselor. Now, where else in this story have we seen a legend of things that look like people? That would be the fake people or wood crawlers that were mentioned in the first episode.
Right, so like the first episode I kind of said that it was kind of similar to skinwalkers, and here they're directly mentioned, so it's kind of, you can definitely see the correlation there.
So these wood crawlers or skinwalkers came to the camp counselor and eventually struck a deal and no longer bothered them. So while keeping that in mind, remember that this camp advertises their harvest or light in the sky.
Things like this are really cool when a lot of things on the internet do this, not really in traditional media, but they you know, they tell a story indirectly, you know. They just kind of put the pieces out for them, for you, and you got to connect them together like this. Yeah, I think it's just really cool and interesting.
Not only that, but at the end, whenever we figure out that the hungry eye is the thing that knocked at the door, or these skin crawlers disguised as humans, that the vessels open the door, or in other words, people that later became the mobiles for these creatures. It'll get more specific as these videos go on, but for now we can see that whatever these things are and however they're taking over the earth, it's been happening for a very long time, since at least 1935. Our next episode is titled Lethal Omen Commercial. This is for a video game created by Regnad Computing, the same people who did the Artificial Intelligence episode. It advertises in the game that you fight enemies in what appears to be the Moonlight Acres family camp. This is confirmed whenever a newspaper on the ground talks about how the up-and-coming Light in the Sky event has been cancelled. Not only that, but next to the main office we can
Now we
see
got a video
a
game
safety
horror.
tower that was again mentioned in the storm safety tips. The game seems to be going normally until near the end the player comes across a sort of flesh or amalgamation of plant.
Yeah, I'm just really liking, the thing about like this series here is just a bunch of the crossovers of all the different types of horror.
With what appears to be a person inside of it. Shortly afterwards, a new enemy appears, slowly lumbering and moving in janky motions towards the player, which cannot be killed. Running away, the player comes across a bunker, and after going inside, we see it's the exact bunker from Storm Safety due to the dimensions of the room, the hemisphere in the middle, and the radio next to the hemisphere. As the player is standing there, a wood crawler begins to burst in before it then cuts to the middle of the night in the camp. The player turns around, sees the iris shown in our solar system, before cutting out and ending the episode. So we see that Regnad
So this one
Computing
kinda-
is
this one kinda
at
connects
least
everything.
knowledgeable enough about what's happening at Moonlight Acres to make this game around it. And aside from the previous mentioned references to past episodes, such as the sort of speaker tower and the bunker, we see new things shown, such as the slowly lumbering creature and the plant thing with a person inside of it. Also, this is really cool. You can actually play Lethal Omen. As a matter of fact, I
That's
did
great.
so on a live stream with
Dude, this is so well made for a series that didn't really have that many views at this time. He's like, the videos seem so well made, the stories well put together, like the clips they show look really scary and really well made, and they actually made a whole ass video game for this. I mean, this is a super great project, really well made.
which was my first live stream on this channel. If you go to the Lethal Omen episode of Gemini Home Entertainment, it's linked in the description. You can play it. There's multiple endings. It's really cool. I'm not going to link it here below
Multiple endings and
because that
everything?
means
Oh my
you have
God.
to go to the original video to get it, so this guy can get more traffic because, once again, he deserves it. The next episode is Jack Wilder's Wilderness Survival Guide. As is common with these things at this point, everything seems fine, talking about survival gear, until talking about how to deal with wild animals, and we get to the bear. As the person walks away, we see the bear transform into something else.
Oh.
Then in the plant life section, we see something called Nature's Mockery. Now this is twofold, as Nature's Mockery is what the wood crawler was described as in World's Weirdest Animals, and the image that we're seeing on screen is very similar to the plant thing seen in Lethal Omen. It says that if contact is made with Nature's Mockery, the person will receive hallucinations, sudden muscular paralysis, body disfigurement, and flesh decay. Then in the next section, when it talks about sounds to avoid, one of the ones that is said to be avoid is screaming, and it's described as auditory hallucinations. Keep in mind, auditory hallucinations is the same thing that Storm Safety Tips said would come out of the radio. We're then given instructions on how to make a fire before it says if the fire fails, follow the lights. Which, as we've talked about, given the hungry eye and all, lights at this point are not a good thing. We then switch back to a handheld camera.
Right.
We then hear screaming before the camera gets to a man in a field who it seems that that's where the screams are coming from, but he's just standing there. As a matter of fact, this person moves very similarly to the fake people seen in
Oh,
World's
yeah.
Weirdest Animals. And to top it off, the way that this thing is moving is similar to the unkillable
Tell
enemy
him,
in Lethal
tell him, man.
Omen.
These
It then
these
talks about
uncanny
if these
valley
scratches
things are so creepy.
obtained while out to rip the foreign object from body, which will be something that applies in a minute, before we get a final shot of this quote-unquote person in a window, standing very similarly to the way that these fake people stood in the first episode. So this wilderness survival guide is trying to teach people how to stay away from these creatures, both nature's mockery and whatever these skinwalker things are. So much so that it says if you hear screaming, it's just a hallucination and don't go towards it. Although he seems to break his own rules when it says if the fire fails, follow the light. So perhaps whoever made this was starting to give in to the hallucinations themselves. Also, keep in mind the
Yeah, I like things like that when the guide who's trying to help you out with this starts to lose it a little bit too, and he starts to be, yeah, it's just it's a really interesting storyline there.
name of the person who made this, Jack Wilder. The other time that we've heard Jack mentioned was in the artificial intelligence episode. So, given the story that was mentioned in that one, it says Jack tried to get away, as Mary could not, before becoming something else. Our next episode, titled Sleep Image Visualizer, is given to us by Harbinge Technologies, the same people who did the storm safety tips. In it, we see a device that seems to be exactly what it says, a sleep image visualizer, or in other words, it can allow your dreams to be seen while you're awake. It describes the way to work the system as placing what appears to be headphones around an aluminum dome. This would be the same aluminum dome that was shown in storm safety tips. We then get some examples of what images the sleep image visualizer can create, such as Levi Jacobs, who was asleep for 6 minutes and received this incredibly comforting image of a face peering around a doorway.
Dude, that's
Next
so
is
scary.
Adrian Gordon,
That's so
who was
creepy,
asleep for
man.
4 minutes and saw what appears to be an observatory. This makes sense given the connections to a potential alien takeover. And then our last two are more interesting, where we then get Jack Dean. Now, in a community post made by Gemini Home Entertainment, we see a missing person image of a Jack Wilder Dean. This means that this Jack mentioned now,
So,
Jack
yeah,
Dean,
it's the
is
same Jack.
the same Jack Wilder who made the wilderness survival video, as well as the Jack mentioned in the artificial intelligence video. Jack was asleep for 3 days and he saw a man by his bed, sitting there simply watching him. We then get our final person with Joseph Allen, who it says never woke up, and his image was that of a giant dark mass rising up over the horizon. Now, not to get too distracted on that last point, but remember how I said you can play the Lethal Omen game yourself? Well, one of the 4 endings that you can get in that game is of this image of a giant dark thing rising up over the horizon. Keep in mind, in the Lethal Omen video seen on the channel, the ending is the iris appearing in the sky. For that reason, I believe this giant dark mass is the iris, which is shown in our solar system, or in other words, the source of all of this. Also, the fact that Joseph never woke up is probably not
a good
great.
sign.
Neither is Jack being asleep for 3 days, but
Yeah,
I'll
the iris
talk
is
about
probably
what
not something
happened
you want
at
to
the
think
end.
about too
Our
much.
next episode's called Games for Kids, brought by
You still got that
Ultimate
Bob Ross video
It
and it's
starts
recommended.
fairly normal, showing several different games that kids can play with friends. While this may be
That's a
looking
liminal
little
image.
too deep,
Oh,
I think it should
that
be.
image right there, the liminal
You
space.
mentioned that all of the games mentioned feature an it character, or in other words, one kid being chased by other kids or vice versa. Regardless, it seems pretty normal until we get to a game called Feed the Woods. In Feed the Woods, it tells the children to wait for their parents to fall asleep before gathering their friends and walking into the woods until they don't see the lights, before screaming at the top of their lungs. In the previous games mentioned,
Dude, look at this creepy ass image.
it would use a red arrow to show
Liminal
where the
spaces.
kids would be while the game was going on. Now we see a red arrow pointing into the darkness and showing us sad faces. The implication being that these scared children are now out there in the dark. We then get another image of Hungry Eye itself before we see a cop car that is pulled underground by one of these arms from either the Hungry Eye.
See, this is so well made. The way those arms came up and then destroyed this police car. I don't even know how they did that, dude. Yeah, I'm telling you, this is fantastically well made.
Wood crawler.
And
It
really
says
scary.
The game is over when, quote, the forest is fed. It then ends on the positive note where it shows an arrow pointing at Earth and says, found you. So we see here that this marketing that is supposed to be aimed at children to show them fun games to play tells them to run into the middle of the woods at night and scream. And then the game is over when the forest is fed. My theory here is similar to the theory that Inside a Mind has. Remember back in the camp video how it says that these men would approach the camp counselor every night until a deal was made and they didn't bother them anymore? Well, it seems like the deal that was made was that instead of attacking the adults, that these creatures would instead take the children. That would explain why this video is being produced, to tell children to do this very risky behavior. Even the visual of the cop car being pulled underground implies that perhaps the police were looking for these missing kids before they themselves were made victims. Also, the underground thing's going to be important in a second, but wait on that for now. And of course, the ending where it shows a giant red arrow pointing at Earth saying "found you" is talking about these aliens that are coming to Earth in order to find us. In our next video, Advanced Mining Vehicle, we see Namad Technologies, who have made an underground rover to explore cave systems. Again, everything's normal at first before it says that there is
here we go, back to the underground thing
on the rover to hear nests. We then start to see these weird sort of red roots that seem to be hanging from the rocks of the cave itself. We then see the message that blood pumps through the garden's veins and the crops mature. This is another mention of whatever this entity is being referred to as a sort of plant, similar to nature's mockery in wilderness survival. The rover then gets a view of a hungry eye that seems to attack it as the rover sinks to incredible depths before we...
The movements here are so well made once again.
So keep a few things in mind. Way back in the ocean video, we saw that whatever these things are, they're associated with this super deep tunnel at the bottom of the ocean. Not only that, but we've had several mentions that these things seem to burrow underground. So whatever these things are, they exist underground in cave systems and are cultivating a sort of nest, as they're called, or these roots to go up above ground. These roots could result in creatures such as nature's mockery. And as it mentions that blood flows through the garden veins, maybe people aren't just being used as vessels for these skinwalkers or wood crawlers, but are also being used as food for these plants. And the hungry eye itself is used to either guard or cultivate these roots. To add weight to that theory, the creator, Remy Abode, refers to this hungry eye creature as the gardeners. We then get more details about that in our next video.
So it's kind of, oh god, they're getting fed,
it starts out with
basically.
The belief that we are referring to a disease that involves plants, hence the title, Deep Root Disease. Until when describing what the disease does, it says that the roots try to make contact.
Yeah, the horror keeps evolving into like what it actually is. So we started off as like the skinwalkers, and we got to the alien stuff, and now we got to this plant thing about it's like of how it needs to grow and all this. So it keeps evolving the expanse of just how deep this this thing is, like that these skinwalkers revolve around, basically.
And when showing how the disease seems to take over, we get an image or short video of a person sleeping. It talks about the symptoms.
That's horrifying.
Sores, sprouting of more roots from the person, muscle spasms. And when it says trying to figure out if someone has deep root disease, one of the things to look for is unrecognizable smells in their home. On top of that, it says that if someone's infected by it, they may stop dreaming, until it eventually says that the person becomes something else. So this deep root disease, which can be associated with the root seen
brings us back to
seems to infect people, dig down.
Brings us back to when they were looking at the dreams earlier.
System until they become something else. Now, the line about looking for strange smells in the home tells me that this directly comes from nests or burrows made in people's houses. So it seems that the way the life cycle for these creatures work is the hungry eyes create these roots that infect people and either turn them into nature's mockery or wood crawlers, or perhaps both, before the wood crawlers then burrow beneath people's houses, catch more people whose bodies they use as vessels and whose blood they use as fuel for their garden so that they can create more. This sort of slow, methodic building of essentially an army would explain why these things have been in motion as the Moonlight Acre.
Probably the scariest form of an alien invasion, just putting a garden, whatever, to slowly it grows, that has to slowly get these people out of their blood from these wood crawlers. Probably the scariest form of an alien invasion you can think of.
Video mentioned since 1935. Our next video, called Monthly Progress Report, is a report from Regnad Computing. This is a specific look at the AI that was mentioned in both Lethal Omen and the AI video. It says that the AI was created for failure prevention and computer processing. As a matter of fact, it says that Lethal Omen was created as a means to show the graphical advancements that their computing power is now capable of. When talking about the Artificial Computer Learning System, or ACL, that they've built, We then get a mention of their client.
Shout out
It
Derek
says that
Rose.
their client spearheaded their AI technology and allowed them to become as powerful as they currently are. We then learn that we are going to see direct contact made from Regnad to their client themselves. We're then shown computers which seem to be covered in these sort of roots that are the same roots shown in Deep Root Disease and Advanced Mining Vehicle. So obviously Regnad is infected to some capacity. Regnad gives a prompt to which their client responds. We're then shown an antenna array before we see a view of what the client is, as it appears to be a giant glowing light in space, either a hungry eye or most likely the iris itself, the source of all of this. Regnad gives the prompt Earth, to which the client responds.
I'm very confused on what the iris
Mary
is.
sees the gateway die. Sleeping ones are eaten whole. The vessel floats. Into the maw, the jaw unhinges. So when asked about the Earth itself, it says that Mary sees the gateway die. If you'll remember, the gateway is what Saturn's rings were referred to as in the solar system video. Before then saying that sleeping ones are eaten whole, the vessel floats, into the maw, the jaw unhinges. All of these lines imply that this creature or the iris consumes entire planets at once, saying that at first Saturn died, and the phrase sleeping ones are eaten whole most likely implies that the entire planet, which is again the vessel that floats, will simply be consumed all at once by this creature when, as it says, the jaw unhinges. What's also really interesting about this is the layout that we see the iris responding in, or the client, is the exact format as the story or children's story that was told in the AI video. Because if you look at the screen as the client is talking, it's in the exact same format as the AI poem, which is why earlier I implied that whatever was being said on screen was not an AI and instead an actual story of something happening. Regnad then gives the prompt of Moonlight, which is in reference to Moonlight Acres, to which the client says, "New things roam the feeding grounds. The harbinger guards in vain. Mary hears a creaking sound. The hungry eye is welcomed." So when asked about Moonlight Acres, which seems to be a place where the adults, or at least a few of the adults, have made a deal to sacrifice creatures to this entity or entities, it refers to Moonlight Acres as the feeding ground. The line "the harbinger guards in vain" is interesting.
The
as
feeding
we have
grounds
a
of the
reference
garden.
to something known
It's
as
just terrible
harbinger
language.
technology. The line "the harbinger guards in vain" implies that the iris is saying that whatever Harbinger Technologies does is not going to work. And if you look at the fact that Harbinger Technologies tried to tell us about the swarms that could be coming in storm safety tips, as well as the sleep image visualizer, it seems that they're trying to help. We then get another reference to Mary with the phrase "Mary hears a creaking sound and the hungry eye is welcomed." We're going to figure out about Mary in just a second, but the hungry eye is welcomed goes back to the camp video in which hungry eyes were trying to be welcomed into these cabins. The final prompt given by Regnad is Jack, to which the computer simply says 4 times in a row, "Jack is with us now," before saying "Jack is us now." And then finally, the episode ends on the message that the client will be in person in about 7 months. So if Jack has been trying to help us this whole time, and now the iris is saying that Jack is with us now, things didn't work out so great for Jack. But we're going to see more details with that.
He became part of the garden.
The next story that we're going to talk
He's been
about
consumed.
right now. In the next episode, Christmas Eve Party, we see Moonlight Acres Christmas Eve Party, which of note is the fact that the video coordinator, Barry Johnson, was one of the vessels that was mentioned in the camp video. Or in other words, Barry Johnson was one of the people who let the hungry eye in. And then very interestingly, we see that our videography was done by Jack and Mary Dean. So not only is that a direct mention of Jack and Mary themselves again, but it also shows us that they were either siblings or more likely married. But if you'll remember, in the original poem mentioned in the 4th episode, it says that Jack jumped over the river and Mary went down it. We're then shown in the video what seems to be a wood crawler attack on a normal Christmas Eve party before a giant amalgamated beast is shown at the door trying to come. We then hear screaming, which
is the fucking wall of flesh from Terraria.
If played backwards, turns from screaming into the phrase, "Jack, it's out here, let me in." In the the final shots, we see whatever
I can barely hear that.
is breaking in, to which we're shown a blurred out picture of a man named Alex and Jack, and then finally we see that the giant beast was Mary. So it seems like what was happening here was Jack and Mary were trying to escape from these creatures before they were overwhelmed. Jack managed to get away, Mary did not. So now Mary is become a vessel for these creatures, and Jack is being attacked by this vesseled form of her. And this thing is using her distorted voice to try to convince Jack to let her inside. So that...
Oh, that's horrifying, man. Like, just your love, hearing the voice of what sounds like your loved one telling you to come outside, and then, but you know that it's not actually her. You know it's a trick to get you. And I mean, eventually he gets caught. Eventually, because Jack is us now. So eventually they both.
It goes back.
That's a horrifying scene right there.
The theory that these roots infect people and then turn them into these giant wood crawler creatures. So while it seems this episode ends rather ambiguously, the fact that we know Mary was a creature, and then in the previous video the Iris said Jack is with us now, once again implies that Jack didn't make it. We then have our final video at this point, which is called Home Invasion Help, brought to us by Optica Video, the same people who made games for kids. The video begins by implying that this is a way to survive a home invasion before you
Well, a home invasion in a way that your home is the Earth and it's getting invaded.
quickly find out that it is the opposite, and it's teaching people how to break into a house. This is done when it talks about breaking a window and how it says it may alert the prey. It also says that prey can be drawn to the door by knocking on it. It says one of the best ways to break into a house is to burrow underground and use that to move between nests. Before we get the horrifying line that after you make your way into the house that you should enter prey via the proboscis. So we get more details now from Optica about what these wood crawlers do. They try to find a way to enter into a house rather quietly or draw people out before essentially stabbing them and filling them with these sort of roots. That then allows them to take the people's place.
Can we not get a shotgun to these guys?
Essentially as skinwalkers, as seen in the very first video on the channel. We then switch back over to found footage in which we see someone walking through a house that seems to be covered in these red roots. Until eventually we start to see people whose entire form is that of roots itself. Up until we see someone in a chair who still has an eye, which when the...
Oh, yeah, this is the thumbnail of the video, and now we can see the context. Yeah, it's blurry, but that's terrifying. This is fantastic horror creature design. Oh, it's just someone who's been completely taken over by the garden.
The camera is shown at it, the eye moves,
Ugh.
indicating that this person is still alive while being consumed by deep root disease. Finally, the cameraman is attacked by something that seems to be a wood crawler, and the transmission goes out. So whenever these wood crawlers attack and fill people with this deep root disease, they become these sort of infected hosts that are slowly turned from the inside out. And it seems that in the end, whoever our cameraman was, didn't make it. So that was all of the episodes.
So now everyone's gone, all the characters, even the cameraman.
Could mean. I want to put the final bow tie on it now. I'm going to make a bold claim and say that every found footage clip that we see is from Jack Dean. So the found footage that was seen in the...
Yeah, he seems to be the main character.
The found footage seen in Jack Wilder's Survival.
And at the end, is the very end there, we see the clip of Jack dying, I'm assuming?
Which makes sense. And the found footage seen in this last one. What seems to happen is these creatures came from the Iris to Earth. Once on Earth, they began to cultivate underground, or at least the Hungry Eyes did, or gardeners as they're known, to create these roots that then infect people with deep root disease, which turns them into wood crawlers and makes them continue to get more people. Jack's wife, Mary, was killed by one of these things, to which he then dedicated himself to trying to stop them, which is what led him to making the wilderness survival video, as well as filming these things any opportunity he got. Although sadly, as mentioned...
Yeah, it is really interesting when you connect the dots and you see it's all kind of something from one person, from one main character. It makes a lot of things be a lot more meaningful. So I like stuff like that, where when you look back at it, it all seems like it's from the perspective kind of one person.
And seen at the ending of Home Improvement Help, whenever he's attacked by these wood crawlers, that seems to be the actual point of his death or his conversion into a vessel, which again gives credence to the line Jack is us now. So where does something like Red Nag and Optica come in? While I don't believe that this is the creatures themselves, because what would these Hungry Eyes and wood crawlers have to do with camera work and video making, it seems that they don't even know how humans walk. I believe that there are certain groups of people on Earth who have adopted the if you can't beat 'em, join 'em mindset, and such as Regnad Computing, who is building computer software to help these things and committing communication with them. Regnad is trying to use this entity for their own benefits, and perhaps they think that they may be safe in 7 months whenever their client comes. Also, Regnad is just danger backwards, so they can't really be the good guys, can they? And also, Optica,
I mean, that's pretty on the
bad
nose.
guys, as your only 2 contributions are how to break into people's houses and telling children to run into the woods and scream at night. Optica
Doesn't seem like
especially the way it's
don't seem like the
written,
greatest
the
guys.
exclamation point seems to be optical, which is again a reference to the iris and the hungry eye. Optica may be another company similar to this, or even more specifically,
Yeah,
it
once again,
could
pretty on
be
the nose.
videos put together by the camp counselors as mentioned in order to make a deal with this creature. That's one of the reasons I feel comfortable saying that perhaps Regnad made a deal, because we know for a fact that the Moonlight Acres themselves made a deal with these things. There's also a few that I can't say for sure if they're one way or the other because they've only been mentioned once, so I'll just call them neutral for now, like Geneva and the Namad mining systems, which these could just be innocent bystanders who aren't sure really of what's
Are there any
going
updates on this series? I
Although
want to see
maybe
it.
not with
I'd like to see if there's any
Namad,
updates on it
like
since this video came
specifically
out.
talked about what the roots do and how they use blood, but again, there's only one video of them, so I can't really say where they lie. And that explains why there's a lot of conflicting info between different videos, such as Harbinge says, whatever you do, don't listen to the radio.
Yeah, it's from different perspectives
and then
here.
Regnad says, go ahead, listen to the radio, it's fine, just do whatever it says. There's
Unreliable
still several
narrator.
questions unanswered, such as, what's the purpose of the bunker or the voices heard on the radio? What's the purpose of the speaker tower and how would that defend you? Which, since it was put out by Harbinge Technologies, I would say maybe that speaker tower actually does something. Who is Alex that was shown at the end of the Christmas video pictured with Jack? And of course, where does this all end? Which is why, if you didn't know, this series is still ongoing. I talked to Remy himself, the creator of this, which is not only a fan of a channel, which, thank you Remy, I'm sure you're watching this. This is fantastic content, and I couldn't thank you enough for it. But he's still actively making these videos, and there's going to be more in the future.
I don't think there's another Wendigoon video on this, so if we're gonna continue the series, and we're actually have to get a, we're gonna have to watch the series and connect the puzzle ourselves here.
So if
And
this
have
sounds
no,
cool
yeah,
to you,
not have our dad Wendigoon connected for
which,
us.
if it doesn't, I can't help you. But this story's still ongoing. If it ever reaches a final conclusion, then maybe I'll make an update on it. But what I would rather happen is, now that I have given you the tools to get started, you subscribe to his channel that is linked below, check out his Patreon and everything else, and then you start building your theory from there. Because at the end of the day, this is my own opinion about what this story could mean, as well as other people have theirs. So there's nothing better than for you to take this information and then go watch it for yourself, because I promise you it's worth your time. So thank you so much, Remy Abode, for this fantastic series. As someone who loves horror and someone who is very upset with how it's treated in the majority of mainstream avenues, I'm so thrilled to see something like this not only be incredible,
Yeah, super well made.
but
So much
continue
internet
to
horror is so
be
well made. This is like
successful. So if you
super
get
well
nothing
made,
else out of this
story
video,
wise and
go
just
watch Gemini
practical
Home
wise.
Entertainment. I promise it's worth your time. But aside from that, thank you all for watching. This
So yeah, so that'll be about it for this video. Yeah, super fantastic. Look over at what the series was at this time by Wendigoon. And yeah, the series seems absolutely fantastic. Really good storytelling. I like how it came back, and when you connect the puzzle, it all seems like the perspective of one character and all that. Like the world building of how you started off just saying at the base level of the creatures that attack, and then you learn slowly like the bigger picture of like the iris and like the reasons why they attack to feed the roots and the garden and all that. And you end with this really scary, you know, just straight up showing the depiction of someone being taken over by these roots. I really like that. So yeah, the series seems fantastic, super well made, especially for a YouTube series. So yeah, if you want to go subscribe to Wendigoon to watch the original videos, click in the description below, or watch the series if you want to see what happens next in the series. I'll probably link that in the description below too. But yeah, so we're trying to get to 2,000 subs, so make sure to do that. So like if you want to see me react to more Wendigoon videos, and that'll be about it. Bye.